Hi, I'm Brian.
Alright guys, so it's time to cut some rebar. I've got 1/2 inch rebar here, it's pretty good size. And I've got my miter saw that I have swapped out the blade for a metal cutoff wheel. Basically like turning this thing into a big grinder, pretty much, right? So that wheel is going to shave through this. So I learned a little trick on the internet, and I've tried it out once, and it seems to work all right. So the idea is, if you just cut through the kind of the outer edge of this rebar and make kind of a groove all the way around it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut, and I'm going to just spin this thing. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm going to spin it, you know, and cut around it. So I'm not going to try and chop all the way through, because I mean it should just save wear. I should get more out of this cutoff wheel if I don't cut all the way through. You might be able to cut all the way through, but just by cutting that outer edge, and you only have to go in about maybe 1/8 of an inch or so around the whole thing, you can then kind of break that piece off. So that's how I'm cutting the rebar. I'm cutting each of my 10-foot sticks of rebar into 3 pieces, so I'm making them about 40 inches, about 3 feet 4 inches. So I get 3 equal pieces out of 1 stick of rebar. So let's cut a piece of rebar. I should mention it definitely does throw some sparks, so be ready for that. But it works all right. Hopefully you can see that. I went probably even a little farther than I have to, but you could do a little less than that. But I think it's really about saving the blade. I mean, I could cut all the way through, but I'll save the blade. So I could do a little less than that, but let's see if I can break this. All right. There we go. All right, so I just cut 30 pieces of rebar and actually a metal pipe as well. That's hollow. That'll be for bending the rebar. I'd cut that pipe also with the cutoff wheel, the metal cutoff wheel that I showed you, which by the way only costs about $5, and it's cut through all this stuff, and I'll probably need to do some more of this later, but it looks like it should last for a little while. Now we need to bend some rebar. So another cool trick that I found on the internet is I've taken a big eye bolt all the way through that 4x6 on the long side, so 5.5 inches to the back side. I should have gotten one slightly longer. So because I didn't, I actually recessed it just slightly. I've got a washer on this side, and I've got a washer on this back side as well, but I recessed it just slightly, about 1/4 of an inch, just so that I could get it secured on the back here. I should have gotten a slightly longer one, but let's take a close look at this and see how it works. All right, so here I've got my rebar clamped into place. The clamp really has nothing to do with the bending. It's just an extra set of hands so that I've got this held to the point where I want to bend it. I'm going to bend 7 inches of this over to kind of put under my tires as I pack them. So that's the spot I want it to bend. So I'm just going to slide that pipe over this and pull it down to 90 degrees. So that's pretty close. That's it. Okay, y'all, there it is. 30 pieces of rebar. So that took me maybe 30, 45 minutes. Not too bad. I should have mentioned this bolt. Whoop, there, I missed one. This eye bolt, which by the way, it did hold up, just the galvanized. If I'd had the chance, I would have got the forged, but I didn't have access to it. It did hold up okay, it looks like. I'll have more of these to do, but so that was maybe $5, and the cutoff wheel was about $5. So for about $10, and you know, you have to have a nice sturdy post to connect to, and I did happen to have a pipe laying around that I did cut off, but I had this pipe laying around. But other than that, $10, 2 pieces to actually cut and bend rebar. So that beats even renting a rebar cutter and bender now. It depends on how much you're going to do, I guess, but maybe it makes sense if you're going to be doing an absolute ton. But for what I had to do, $10, totally worth it. All right, on to the next step. All right, so here we are just getting started with the actual footer for the bale walls. So this is the start. I know it looks a little funky angle, but that's, I tried to explain earlier that I used the app to determine what south was, and it turns out it was off a little bit, so I ended up using the sun. So I had done my outer kind of retaining wall based on the app. It was off a little bit, so when I decided what south was and north was, I had to kick things a little bit, but it'll still fit. It'll still fit on this retaining wall pad that I put here, so that's okay. Anyway, these are my first 4 tires for the foundation of the bale walls, the actual footer. And they've got pieces of rebar that are bent to go underneath the tires to trap them underneath so that they won't want to pull up each of those, and there's one in between each tire. And then when I'm done with all this, this will actually all be covered with dirt, and this will essentially be ground level here. This will all be backfilled. So these will pretty much disappear, even though they'll be right at the surface, they'll disappear, and we'll just have a bunch of rebar sticking up. At that point, I'll put another layer of tires, and those tires the rebar will come up inside the tires, and I'll use that when I place my sill plate, my wooden sill plate, on top of that next layer of tires. These rebars will act to kind of pin those down. I'll bend them over the top of that sill plate and pin it down, so it will be pinned down to the second course of tires that'll be on top of these. So that's why that rebar is so long. It's going to go another tire and a sill plate, and then it'll bend over. A sill plate that's 1.5 inches, a piece of lumber. But this is the first time I've actually gone really out of my way to pack tires really tight. I've done a bunch of tires, but as I said before, they were just for retaining walls, and it didn't matter that they were insanely level or super packed tight. I did a pretty decent job with them, but I didn't go way out of my way. Well, these ones I really took some time with and filled them nice and tight, and I've leveled them individually and to each other, and I've got a string line running along here too. The string line is as much for kind of finding the edge as it is for the actual, it should be level as well, but I'm going to level each tire to the one next to it, so everything should stay nice and level. But what you're looking at here will actually be underground, so this is sort of the foundation work. This is the footer, and then there will actually be another level. So this is just to backfill and give us a nice, solid, stable base, and it's holding these pieces of rebar in place that are going to act as kind of pins to pin down the sill plate to the tires, which will allow us to get a connection between bales, sill plate, tires, under footer, so hopefully tie everything together. But this is okay, guys, we're making a little progress here on our tire footer. Got kind of this front stretch left to go, but we got some dirt brought over recently. Got a pile of dirt here to fill some more tires because I had run out, and CJ also kind of just dropped some dirt in a couple of the fill spots. We're eventually going to fill this whole thing, but we wanted to see how it would kind of fill in and pack and kind of harden up and how it would level off and everything. So this is kind of a look at what the whole thing, this is a preview of what hopefully this whole thing's going to look like shortly. Basically covering over all these tires, and all we're going to have left basically is a bunch of rebar sticking up in this rectangle, which is our footer, and that's when we'll put, so that'll be new ground level at that point with just rebar sticking up, and then we'll go a set of tires over that rebar that will be those tires will be the foundation for the sill plate, and the rebar will kind of clamp that sill plate into place. But so that's just a preview of kind of where we're headed, this whole section to look like that. But I wanted to stop and take a break and look at kind of what it takes in detail to fill one of these tires. We've shown a tire pounding video before, but I just want to take you through the process of what kind of I'm doing for each one of these tires as far as leveling, filling, packing, getting the rebar in there, all that stuff. So let's take a closer look. So here we are ready for our next tire. We've got a piece of rebar on the edge of this tire. We'll want a piece of rebar here as well, and our next tire. Level with this guy, obviously. Level itself in all directions, and level with this next tire so that we continue along there. So the first thing, this string line is really just not necessarily for the level, it's more for the line, the direction that I want to head. So kind of placing all these tires pretty much right up against that line just to keep us in a straight line to have our orientation. This is the long side of our house. This here is the long side pointing south. So this will be the side with the most windows that'll take in the winter sun, and we'll keep out the summer sun with an appropriate overhang on this side of the house. But we're about to fill our next tire. So the first thing we're gonna do is get the ground underneath it ready. And I'll put the tire in place and show you in a second, but the first thing we've gotta do is add a little dirt and smooth it all out and get it all nice and level and tamp it, get it all nice and packed before I place the tire on there. And the way I get it to the height of this tire, I mean, you can't, once you pack these tires, they actually grow, right? Because you're kind of packing into that sidewall. So it's gonna grow. So what I do is I try and evaluate with each tire kind of how much flex that sidewall has. When I bring that tire over here, I'll show you. And I kind of try to anticipate how much that sidewall could potentially kind of rise as I fill it with dirt. So I'll put that tire next to this tire, I'll lay a level across between the two of them, and I'll kind of stretch the sidewall of that tire to get an idea of where I think that tire is going to end up after it's packed with dirt. And I do the best job I can to get it real close to that so that when I do pack it, I can actually get these two totally level with that tire fully packed tight and not really be spongy in there. So that's kind of there's a little bit of an art to that. I've gotten better at it as I've gone along to anticipate how that tire is going to look next to this one once it's filled, because you can't just set it on the ground and have it be, when it's got no dirt in it, you don't want it to be the same height as this tire here on top, because once you fill it with dirt, that sidewall is going to kind of creep up and then they wouldn't be level anymore. So that's kind of a game of anticipating how much that tire is going to stretch. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so now I've got it in the ballpark, being level in all directions, and you can see how I kind of stepped on the tire and lifted up on the sidewall to see how much it would kind of stretch up as I fill it in comparison to that next tire. And I get it real close to where I think I can reach by stretching that sidewall up to be level with that next one. So I actually have it slightly high on this side here, and that's on purpose because I'm about to slip my piece of rebar underneath there, and that's going to raise this side up just a tiny bit. But everything's going to settle in, and the reason I just have to get very close is because you can the final leveling of itself and compared to the next tire will happen by kind of packing that sidewall at the end and tamping it. So right now it just has to be really, really close, but I can make little adjustments, fine adjustments by how tight I pack the tire and how much I tamp it. So we're going to slip that rebar in there now. So now I've got everything real close with the rebar in place. You can see how it's hooked under the tire. So once I fill that tire and pack that tire like these others, they weigh in the neighborhood of 300 pounds depending on the tire. So it's not really going anywhere. So that rebar being hooked under there, we're going to use that later on to kind of trap the sill plate against our second set of tires. So let's fill this tire. At first I'll fill it about halfway so that I get a chance to tamp it before I get it full. You know, trying to tamp this much dirt probably doesn't do as good a job of compaction as tamping this much dirt. So fill it about halfway, kind of level the dirt around in there a little bit with your hand, tuck it up into the sidewalls, give it a good tamp so you've got about the first half of the tire packed pretty tight, and then we'll continue. All right, that's a good solid start about the first half of the tire. Let's finish it up. So as we add dirt, we've got to constantly, until it gets pretty full and pretty packed, we've got to keep pushing that dirt up into the sidewalls. So at first I'll just do that with my hands, and then eventually I'll use another tool to help me. All right, let's get a little help to get this packed tighter. All right, so now we're starting to get the sidewalls packed a little bit. We'll just keep doing that process a few times, packing it tighter and tighter, and eventually I'll use the sledge to push it up there even further. And then we'll start tamping it down to get it to the right level that we want. All right, time for some more assistance. Okay, so I've driven that dirt up into the sidewalls as much as I can. So hopefully there's not a lot of give here. So at this point, because I filled it really tight, it should actually be slightly higher than the tire next to it if I put the level on it. And it is. It's running uphill. This is higher than this. And that's because I'm about to tamp and things are going to settle a little bit as I tamp this down. So that's where I can control the final level of this tire on its own and in relation to that tire next to it. So I have a little bit of control there, a little bit of flexibility. So I'm going to add some more dirt to this so that it's kind of overfilled, and I'm going to start to tamp it down, and things are going to compact and settle, and I'll get it to come to a level that I like. Now once I know it's packed pretty tight and tamped, I'm going to scrape off the excess so that this is a flat surface on top, level with the edges with the sidewall as high as I've packed it. And then I'll do some final tamping for the final level of this tire and compared to the next tire. Okay, it's level in all directions itself, and it's level with the tire next to it. That's a tire down with a piece of rebar stuck underneath it. So I've been informed that Pam has a great idea, so let's check it out.
Should we get in the hole? Where I don't see me.
You're on there.
Oh, okay.
What do you got?
So when I was down there, I just started dragging sticks over to where the water line is exposed, because last night they tore it up real bad and ran over it and stuff worse. So I started putting like rocks around it, and then I thought I'm going to drag some branches over here and put in front of it. So I put branches all around it, and I stuck some of them up in the, sticking up, so that way they'll see it ahead of time. But I was thinking maybe I could get a big branch and like put a piece of wood on it that says water line or something.
Yeah, that's a good idea. It doesn't have to be much. It's just so
they
just
know
so
it's
that we
there.
get them to drive around it.
Yes.
Yeah. Because our water line's just laying on the ground, so.
And the ATVs or whatever those are, Ranger thingies, keep running over it.
Yeah.
Is that a quail? What is that?
Squirrel.
Squirrel.
All right.
All right.
Moving on.
Was that a good idea?
Yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you liked what you saw, please hit that thumbs up button and consider subscribing or sharing with a friend. And click the bell notification so you never miss any of our videos. We appreciate every view and comment, and if you're looking for other ways to support us, please check out the links in the description box. See you in the next video.